Hello, my friends, and welcome back. Thank you very much for being with me again today. We learn a lot, if we are wise, from our mistakes. But in order to make a mistake, we have to act. And we have to look at the evidence, the situation, the mistake in an objective way. And we're going to find solutions to solve, or at least to adapt. And then try again, and then you try again. And by trying, you're going to eliminate issues. That's the plan, and you're gonna become better. From history, we learn, a certain kind of behavior that people in certain circumstances acted in the same way. Be it Alexander the Great, being Leonidas, being many other Caesar and other, or Napoleon Bonaparte, great leaders. And they acted the same way in the same situations. Why? Because we are human, all of us. So we act based on pleasure and displeasure or pain. We have examples, and we learn if we want to learn. What happens now? Zelensky is visiting the global moralizer, who is none other than Prime Minister of Canada, Trudeau, and Canada commits to give Zelensky $482 million in military assistance. Now, that might not sound a lot, even though it's $500 million, but anyway. But then the second part of this little article drew my attention, and that comes from Sputnik. Here it is. And to send F-16 pilot trainers. So Canada commits to send pilot trainers to Ukraine to train Ukrainian pilots and manage the, I was about to say MiGs, the F-16s. All this sounds very neutral and, inoffensive. But if you know history, you realize that this happened many times before in covert operations where they say, well, we're going to provide you with a weapon and we're going to just train you. And actually, I'm the one actually fighting for you in a war with that weapon that supposedly I provided you with. The best example for that is the Korean War, when the Soviet Union provided the North Koreans with MiG-15. Remember that one? And say, we're just going to train you to operate the MiG-15s, which are these beautiful planes. So they operated the MiG-15s, and they were destroying the American planes, bombers, and so on. But the problem was, it was not the North Korean pilots operating them. It was the Soviet pilots from the Second World War. So they were very good at it, supposedly, and that's how things change in the sky. So how did they know? How the Allies? They intercepted the communication between, Volodymyr and, Zhmyhal, I was about to say. So they intercepted the communication between the Soviet pilots. That's how they knew these guys are not North Koreans, these are Soviet, indeed. So when you see this, where is it? When you see this, I suggested many times before that all this training that the Ukrainian pilots, they're perfectly capable of flying F-16. That's beyond the point. My point is they will probably not let them get on F-16s. Why? They're afraid these guys might take one and land it in Russia. Or two, or three. That's beyond, But let's see, because don't jump the gun. They're just pilots and trainers. But let me show you here somewhere. Here on the bottom, it says that. All right. Canada will also be sending F-16 instructors to train Ukrainian pilots, and this is another one, and to maintaining the donated fighter jets. Like what? Like, that's why they're maintaining. What are they going to maintain? The pilots. What do you think they're going to maintain? Oh, let me take it for a spin for this sortie right now. So let me show you this right here. Maybe you're familiar with this one. Now ignore the origin. The origin is Russia beyond, but it's Maybe just the semantics, but the reality is there. So Korean War, how the MiG-15, this guy, put an end to American mastery over the skies. These are in flight. So the superiority of the excellent MiG, as I said, ignore the which was MiG-15 was a fantastic plane, fantastic. Experts ask people who Americans that piloted them, and after a long time, was one of the key factors that led to Russian pilots, Soviet pilots, emerging on top in the air war over Korea. And it says here that in September 1950, the US Air Force conducted a massive daytime raid over the North Korean town of Sinuiju. The raid, conducted by 8 B-29 bombers, resulted in the greatest loss of life since the American atomic bombing of Nagasaki. The entire town, which was built from bamboo and wood, burned to the ground. They're lying. Yeah, I know they're lying. More than 30,000 innocent civilians were burned alive. They're lying. All right. Unable to stop these raids by the Air Force of the US, Britain, and Australia, the North Koreans appealed to Moscow. The Russians, the Soviets, sent in their latest MiG-15 flown by battle-hardened veterans of the World War II. The result was dramatic. In the very first aerial battle between Russian Soviets and American planes over Korea on November 1st, 1950, the Soviets shot down 2 Mustangs while losing none of their MiGs. 1950, I have to remind you, that Georgian dictator called Vissarionovich Stalin, Joseph Vissarionovich Jugashvili, he was a Georgian communist criminal. He, not the Russians, sent the MiGs. Okay, so when they say here the Russians sent, it was not the Russians. It was the Georgian. It was the Gruzin. All right? Just to clarify that, because say, oh, the Russians, Stalin. No. Besides the fact that communism did not come from Russia, it came actually from France via Karl Marx, son of a rabbi, nothing, and then came to Russia, pushed by certain people during the First World War. I'm not going to mention that, but I will. Remember that train that brought, what's the name, Lenin from Switzerland straight to St. Petersburg? And where was Trotsky? What's his name? Bernstein? Where was he? In New York with the bankers? Why don't you read a little bit? Who financed the Bolshevik, not the Russian, the Bolshevik Revolution? The Russian Revolution was one thing, and then the Bolsheviks took over it by destroying the Mensheviks. So, with the money of where from? Just see where Mr. Trotsky, that fantastic guy, got some money from. Mr. Bronstein, I think is his name. Right? My friends. And now we have Zelensky-Stein. And we have Blinkenstein. And we have Nulandstein. And we have all these Romanians. So, my friends, I think those Canadian trainers and maintenance guy are going to be very much piloting some of those, as the Americans will pilot theirs. I have a gut feeling, and if they don't pilot them all, some of them will be. We'll find out when the Russians down a few, and then we'll say, oh, wait a minute, hey, what's going on, Gigi? I'm a Canadian. Okay, come over here, put in front of the cameras, like they did in 61 was it? Or 1961, 62? I think 61 or 62, when the Soviets, my bad, boom, hit that U-2 plane. There was the spy plane flying too high for the You see how I got fooled by these idiots? By the Soviets, they were flying and saying, no, we're not flying over your territory, spy planes. No, they're not. And what did the Soviets do? They got that interceptor. They created the interceptor that was flying high enough to get it, send the missile, boom, clop, and the Americans said, no, they can't do that, they don't know. And then they thought they downed it, and they didn't rescue the pilot. And then they put the pilot in front of a TV camera. Yes, I'm sorry. You're the best. And then what happened with Khrushchev and with Kennedy? Vienna 2? Out. I think it was Vienna 2. because in Vienna 1 it was knockout done by Khrushchev. You have to read what JFK told about the meeting with Khrushchev. He came all sweaty and said, I was knocked out. Why? Because you're a weasel in here versus those criminals over there. But anyway, Khrushchev was older, this guy was younger. Khrushchev was there, this guy was here. This guy had Marilyn Monroe, the other guy got his guys ready to prop him. Different environment. I'm not saying that's better, but he was prepared for a different kind of verbal spat. And Khrushchev was not a tough guy. Khrushchev was a kind of semi-clown, according with some. But anyway, that's why a lot of people say, how in the fuck this guy got to be the Secretary General of whatever. He maneuvered well. Thank you very much for being with me again today. Stay strong, stay smart, look for the truth, and be just.